Everyone, in this correcting errors video, I'm going to show you how to pick up drop stitches, dropped knit or purl stitches. So I'm going to first show you how to pick up dropped knit stitches. Now let's say you're knitting and you come across a stitch that looks like that, right? The stitch has been dropped. You can see that the stitch is actually right here and there's one little floating loop at the back or little float at the back. That means in the previous row the stitch got dropped, or in this row as you were doing it the stitch got dropped. So this technique that I'm showing here only applies to when one row of or the stitch has been dropped either in this row or the previous row, right? That you just have one little floating loop at the back or little float at the back, okay? So to fix this, what you're going to do is you're going to take your right needle and you're going to insert it into the stitch, just like that, just straight on. Then take the same needle and put it through that little float, right? Then you're going to take your left needle and bring this second loop over this first loop to pick up the stitch. So you're going to take your left needle, insert it in here and bring it over. And that picks up the stitch. Once you've done that, you still have to knit the stitch, right? In this row, we're only up to here. You can see that the working yarn is here, which means the stitch still has to go back on this needle. Make sure you transfer it to that needle. It's in the right orientation because the front loop of the stitch is higher than the back loop of the stitch. So it's transferred on correctly and we can now knit it, right? Let's see that one more time. Let's say I keep knitting and I was really clumsy and I come across, another drop stitch right here. So again, you can see the stitch is right here, one little float in the back, which means I've just dropped it. And so that means I can take my needle, insert it into the stitch head on, pick up the float, take the left needle, insert and bring it over, right? And I've picked up the stitch. Now I'm going to transfer it back in the right orientation and I can keep knitting. So that's how you would pick up dropped knit stitches. Now let's do this for purl and let's drop a couple purl stitches. So I'm going to intentionally drop a couple of these purl stitches for our demonstration here. Every fiber in my being is going, should not be dropping stitches, but unfortunately that's the curse of the knitter. We always have drop stitches and that's okay, we can fix them. All right, so now I'm on my purl row and I'm purling away and I come across a dropped purl stitch, right? You can see that. So the way to fix that is I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to insert it here, or take that drop stitch which is sitting at the back. So this time the float is in the front, the drop stitch is in the back. So I'm going to take this and insert it into the stitch like this. I'm going to then insert the right needle into the float and I'm going to bring this over this. So to do that, I'm going to take my left needle, insert it into this back loop and bring it over, right? And I still need to transfer the stitch back onto the needle. And there, I've picked up that drop stitch. Now I'm going to purl it and keep purling until I come to the next drop stitch. Now you can see this stitch is almost going to drop another row, right? When that happens, just pull it through. And I'll show you in another video how to fix this when it's dropped through multiple rows. But for now, let's assume it's just dropped through the previous row. You can see that the float is in front of the stitch. I'm going to take my right needle, insert it through that stitch. I'm going to then insert it through this and I'm going to bring this second loop. So take your left needle and bring it over that. Transfer the stitch back, make sure it's in the right orientation. Front loop higher than the back loop. That is correct. And I can keep purling the rest of the row. And so that is how you pick up knit and drop stitches, or pick up dropped knit and purl stitches. If you have any questions, please leave them for me in the comments field. And as always, thanks for watching. Don't let errors intimidate you. Keep on knitting and happy knitting all.